what are your broad takeaways here?
Yeah, well, it's quite a report. I mean, it's as much a prescription of remedies and the list of harms as it is a kind of call to action. The committee is urging Congress to kind of revive the great antitrust tradition of oversight, hearkening back to the days of Ma Bell and the railroad tycoons, the oil barons, Microsoft. It's thorough, 448 pages. I have not read the whole thing. I'm sure a few people have. And it's fairly damning. It shows how Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google engaged in anti-competitive, monopoly-style tactics. I think one of the more effective things the report does is it draws lines of connections between the companies. So you see how they misappropriated data on their platforms. Google and Apple do it by tracking usage trends and growth patterns on third-party apps and then releasing their own. Amazon does it by tracking what sells and producing white label products. Facebook looks at its platform, identifies what's growing fast, and makes acquisitions. So, these companies are going to have their hands full responding to this very comprehensive report.
Amazon published a blog post in response to the report calling misguided interventions in the free market, saying they would kill off independent retailers and punish consumers. You've written a book about Amazon. You're writing another book about Amazon. The big contention is Amazon selling its own products on its own marketplace. If that is disrupted, how far-reaching would the implications be?
Right. It's a bit more than that with respect to Amazon. I think the most effective parts of the report pertaining to Amazon is really kind of describing how the company engages in what the report calls bullying. So, that's suspending sellers without notice, requiring them to advertise, forcing them into most favored nation relationships, which prevents them from lowering prices on other platforms. Now, the report addressed things like Alexa and AWS sort of unpersuasively, I thought. But when it comes to the sellers, Amazon disputes this, but I think they have to realize that the chorus of voices is loud now, and sellers feel like they're in a vice. And, the blog post, I think, is Amazon's first crack at responding to this thing. It says that their interests are aligned with sellers, but the facts are the facts, and a lot of sellers are complaining about Amazon's conduct.
What kind of chain reaction is this going to kick off? I mean, obviously, Democrats need to try to get Republicans on side. This will be certainly a long congressional process. But what's next?
Well, I think this is really the starter pistol, right? It's the beginning of the race. The Justice Department's about to file an antitrust complaint against Google. The Justice Department and the FTC are also looking at Amazon, Apple, and Facebook. You have everything going on in Europe. A lot's going to hinge on the next election. I think when it comes to remedies, they talked a little bit about structural separation of the companies. That's a hard road. It's very kind of politically, sensitive. Not a lot of Republicans agree with that. So I think it's the beginning. But I think we can officially declare that the age of these companies kind of skating by in Washington with this report is now over.
So last quick question. Obviously, these companies have incredible resources. How do you expect them to fight back?
Yeah, well, actually, it's one of the things that the report talks about, which is, these companies are growing in Washington, D.C., that agencies have often been kind of outgunned. The companies will fight back by doing what they do, hiring lobbyists and arguing their cases strenuously with lawmakers. And one of the things that this report calls for, I think one of the more practical suggestions is for Congress to, amplify funding to antitrust agencies and to basically re-embrace its historic role as kind of an antitrust watchdog.